So, good afternoon and welcome back to the podcast with myself and Ben. This is I've gone dumb, the Behaviour Intelligence Podcast. And today we have a special guest with us, Coby Ambrose. Would you like to say hello, Coby?
Hello, everyone.
So, let's start off with a little bit about Coby. I first met him some years back through the company where he was then working, and we've been connected in one way or another ever since. This year, he took the very brave decision to start out on his own with Ambro Tech Limited, which provides hosting, cybersecurity, IT support, and web development. One thing that I think encapsulates Coby's approach to his business and what makes him an ideal guest for us is this quote from his website. If you want a provider who's approachable, responsive, and actually listens, well, that's me. Coby, welcome. And I'd like to start with this, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Tech support is usually seen as distant and an unemotional service. So why are you so intent on focusing on connecting on a human level with your customers?
I think something that you mentioned earlier from my website is that I listen. And that's where this comes from. Listening to customers. When someone is looking for a new IT department, they're not looking at your certifications. They're not looking at your partnerships. They're going to be looking at how fast are these people responding? What do other people think about how this company communicates and how they are to work with? And are they someone that I want to call my IT department that I'm going to be calling up when I'm super stressed and super frustrated with technology?
Okay, so I mean, it's worth saying that I think you're focusing on a certain demographic of customers because if we were talking about conglomerates or big companies, then they probably wouldn't interest them, would it?
It's true. It's true. A lot of the larger companies that I've worked at, for example, the office that I work at, their IT department is basically non-existent to the end user, to the customer. And that level of service is probably more suited to a conglomerate or a very big business. But my demographic, which is sole traders, small businesses to medium businesses, those kinds of people care about the certifications, they care about security, which I'm qualified in, but one of their priorities is communication and how they're going to be spoken to and how they're going to be dealt with when they're having an issue.
And how are you finding that approach? How's it working for you?
It's going super well, actually, because it feels like good communication shouldn't be a USP. It should just be a property that all IT departments aspire for. But I feel like it's almost a way to brand yourself that you do communicate in this way. And it does set me apart, I feel like, from competitors in the local area. Not to say that they don't communicate well, just that an emphasis isn't placed on it to the extent that it is at Ambro Tech.
Okay, Ben, have you got anything?
Yeah. So we were mentioning before as well, and just Bob, can you slide over a little bit? You're kind of nudging yourself out of the mini. There you go. Beautiful. Everyone can
see. That's my tech side coming out.
That's why we need Coby.
I'm pushing this way a little bit.
Like the old 90s cartoons and that kind of thing. No, I mean, especially nowadays, with everyone seemingly so obsessed with like a technical race of sorts to be the next biggest provider of the next thing, whatever it is, and there are some knock-on effects towards the human behavior side of things as a result, and only in my experience, bear in mind, which is, take that or leave that en masse. It seems to have led to the kind of confusion around technology and human behavior that they're totally separate things. They're totally separate systems, totally separate ideologies, totally separate everything. When, at least for my two pennies, they're very much interrelated. We were mentioning a few minutes before we started. Like if I want to pen test something, I mean, yes, you have to consider the technology, but we used to operate with this kind of moniker that people are the passwords. There was a few years ago, I used to I used to pretend to be a mentalist for money, which makes me sound like a whore of sorts. But there was one parts of the routine where you try and figure out someone's password to their phone, and I would only ask them how good their memory was, and depending upon what they'd say, would tell me if they'd use a code that's easy to remember, which tells me that it's likely a date of birth or it's a 4 to 6, this type of thing. And so really what I'm getting at is, what is your opinion on why this potential misunderstanding of technology and human behavior, why it exists, why people think it's so separate when actually it's so importantly connected?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think of any sort of sitcom that's based around tech support, you'll always see sort of someone with a hoodie on in a dark room, the corner of a room, not really speaking to anyone, just with a bright screen in front of them and their hands on the keyboard. But from my experience working in an IT department and just a support department in general in the tech industry, it's completely different. You have to deal with people's emotions so much. I once had a client that was so frustrated with their laptop. Obviously, this is a sole trader, so their business is their life. That she broke down in tears because of not understanding it and just being in a really bad place with her computer. Luckily, we're sort of able to help her through that. So it's not just about, okay, click here, we'll fix this bit, and now you're not crying anymore. It's about reassuring her for the future, telling her how she's going to, come back from this tech thing that's happened, and just trying to offer that extra level of support. Because when someone calls with an issue, more often than not, they'll also have an emotional issue attached with that, which is the frustration they're having with that particular issue. So you've got to deal with both things. I find the best way a lot of the time to deal with an issue, if it's going to take a longer time to resolve, or if I don't have the answers yet, people love hearing answers. They don't like hearing that I don't have an answer. So usually I'll say, go and make a cup of coffee, just relax for a little bit. I'll come off the phone. I'm going to find out what the issue is. I'm going to find out the resolution. I'm going to report it all back to you after you've had this coffee. And that works incredibly well in 99% of situations.
It's such a fascinating thing. Well, for me, because I'm a massive dork, but when it comes to problem solving of any kind, whether it be in technology or understanding people or quantum mechanics, whatever it is, the second you become, so emotionally entangled with the scenario, there is a distinct inability to be able to see what it is that's in front of you with the clarity that you need. It's especially challenging in a situation that needs de-escalating. But how do you manage it? Whether it be via a telephone call, because it's very different to face, obviously. But there are certain restrictions that one has to deal with when it comes to the proverbial tech support. How do you manage that?
Indeed. So obviously what someone is saying is not necessarily what they're seeing. So if you're in person with someone trying to troubleshoot an issue, it's completely different to being over the phone trying to troubleshoot an issue. A really good example of this, essentially you just have to assume that the customer doesn't know what they're talking about and they have no idea what they're looking at, and work from there. An example of this is when a customer couldn't use their computer at all. They were trying to type in some letters and they just weren't coming up on the screen. And it turned out it's because they had their phone resting on one of the keys of the keyboard so that they couldn't press any of the others. And that sort of thing you're just not going to be able to pick up over the phone unless you've had this kind of issue before, which luckily I've had this 2 or 3 times now, so I know to ask the question. But also just to assume the customer, there's something they're not telling you. It can even be to do with pride sometimes, particularly with males or the older generation. I know technology, there's nothing that I'm doing wrong, it's the computer, this a lot of the time. So they might cover up facts, clues that would really help to deduce what the issue is, because they think they've done something wrong and they don't want me to know about it. So a lot of the time, it's the case of looking at logs, the pure hard facts, evidence. And whether or not I confront them about that is usually depends on sort of their emotional needs at the time. But usually I'll just say, oh, yeah, that's really weird. Must have been a computer glitch, and continue, because it's really not worth the argument. If they're not willing and forthcoming with that fact, then the issue is resolved. I've deduced where it came from, and I don't see a reason to bring it up. So yeah, it's super interesting.
I agree, and Bob, I promise you've let me off my leash now, so I'll tag you back in a minute. But especially in that dynamic, it makes me think of the old kind of Moravian percentages thing, that, you know, the body language is the highest percentage of understanding communication. Like, well, how the hell is somebody going to do that on the phone? You know, so well, what is it that, I mean, even if you are consciously aware of it or not, like what is it that you try and make sure they hear in your voice? Is it just the proverbial pilot's tone of it just being very, very calm and in control?
It's a great question. I think I'll work backwards on that question of what not to do on the phone to a customer when they're super frustrated and screaming at you, is join in. It always kind of makes me laugh when I see competitors or hear about competitors kind of joining in the anger and the frustration and just making things worse and worse and worse. The word that you used earlier was de-escalation. It doesn't feel like a word that would come up a lot in tech support, but honestly, it does, trying to provide that sort of, like you said, the pilot voice, the calming voice. For some people, it can frustrate them if you're super calm about their issue. So sometimes I sort of speed up the way that I'm speaking a little bit to show that I know this is an urgent issue and I'm working as fast as I can to fix it, but I am calm and I'm not worried for you because you've got me to fix the issue. So it's all about kind of reflecting them sometimes, but not reflecting them in other times.
Nice. One of the and Bob, it's your go next. One of the things that rings true from when I used to run customer service training, which I know for a fact is totally different, but because it's on the phone, is it was kind of a thing that I stumbled onto, was just because they say it louder doesn't mean that they're right. That you could see it was a series of bubbles popping around the room, like, so, oh, I don't have to take that personally. You know, this kind of thing grounded a number of the people. Anyway, I'll get back in my cage now. Bob, it's your turn.
I was just something you said earlier on about some people just want this, and I think that's where it's not just about saying I want to be more human and answering the phone. It's about understanding the wants and needs of the other person. And we have people who, you know, not everyone wants the same conversation, and understanding the conversation that the other person wants. They might just want a quick response, or they might want a more empathetic approach. And understanding humans so that you can understand from the way they present themselves what they want from that conversation is key. Do you think?
I think so. I think with a lot of IT businesses, they're one or the other. So they will brand themselves an IT department. There's no jargon. There's just the answers, and then you're done. There are other IT departments that do provide that sort of wordy, but talking a lot, kind of genuine interest in the customer, but that kind of service. I feel like I can kind of be a bit more dynamic than that and kind of reflect what the customer wants and what they're asking of me. To the point where at one point I was considering whether to add a question into the booking form for a support session. Do you want the sort of no jargon bullet points, that's the pure facts kind of communication, or the opposite? I decided against it in the end because I feel like a lot of people might not know what they want. So it should be down to me to decide that, and for me to communicate that to them in the way that they want. Because if they've accidentally ticked the right button and then I start sort of just working straight away without speaking to them, then they're going to be a bit jarred. That's...
Sorry, I was talking to you there. I think that's a good move, Coby, because as people know, I say a lot, behaviour isn't binary. What one person wants that day will not be what they want the next day, because their situation or their environment or anything could be totally different, and that will impact on what they want. And so I agree with you. It's best to, like you said again, right at the beginning, is to adopt a listening ask people what they want. What can I do for you, and get them to talk to you rather than impose, which I think happens with a lot. And Ben would probably have words about this with having done sales training and training for people answering the phone. Is they work to a checklist. And then a lot of the time they're told that this call can only last this amount of time because they've got other calls waiting. And that takes away, because there's one thing that I think is really important with what you're doing, which is why I think this opportunity to let people see who you are, is you've got to be authentic. Anyone can say, oh, we listen. But there's, people will soon see through that if you're not following that.
Yeah. I make sure to sort of remember at least one detail about what clients that I speak to, or even people that aren't clients, vendors, just to be nice. Remember one detail about them, their lives that they've told me during some small talk, and then ask them for an update the next time I speak to them. And it's a genuine thing that I do, because I am genuinely interested in the person and sort of what they're up to and how that influences how we're going to be working together in the future. Is there a house move soon that they're not going to be available for? Have they got a recent example is an uncle that's just been moved into a different hospital, so they're going to be away for a little while. Just having that background information can help so much in the way that they want to be communicated with. And kind of going back to it changes per even for a single person, the way that they want to be communicated with will change. One of the factors that affects that is what you're talking about. So my role as a managing director isn't just support and customer service. It's the billing side of things and accounting and all these sorts of queries. And when you're talking about sort of the money that people are giving you, they definitely want, hard numbers. They want to know exactly what's going on. But when it comes to the support side of things, they might not really care. They're like, go away, just deal with it yourself, and then come back to me afterwards. And vice versa. I've got a client that wants to know everything about their computer systems, wants to know everything that's going on technically. But when it comes to the billing, they really don't mind. They know that I'm billing them fairly, so they just let the direct debits come out each month and don't want any input in that side of things at all. So yeah, it really, there's so many factors, but that's another one that affects the way that I speak to customers.
One thing that's come to mind about your approach and everything, and something which I don't know if you've considered going forward, is a bit of a story. I was once, when I was in the police, I had a witness who he became quite attached to me because I had a lot of dealings with him. And it was Christmas Day, and he rang me up on Christmas Day because he couldn't fit his turkey in the oven. So it's all well and good having the professional, like the personal touch and the emotional attachment. But how are you going to know when to draw the line? How are you going to deal with that when, have you thought about that? How you're going to make sure that it stays professional and doesn't move into something else?
Absolutely. I think the first step is recognizing that. So knowing the difference between sort of what is professionally viable or financially viable as well. Being asked to do extra things that aren't necessarily included in the service you're offering. I think the way to recognize that would be just have very clear scope of services in the beginning. Particularly with IT, saying I will deal with this system, I won't deal with this one. Obviously, a lot of the time that is a written thing, and people don't read terms and conditions, but at least there's something to refer back to, and it's not just sort of plucked out of my head, because that's when people start to get a bit annoyed and say, "Well, that is included." It's about sort of placing yourself correctly in the market as well. So if you're pricing really unfairly up here, the customer probably does feel like they should be getting more for that. So they'll be asking requests that aren't necessarily within what you thought was the scope. And that's just something to reflect on internally and think, okay, should I be lowering the prices a little bit or raising the prices to include that as a service? Because customer expectations is one of the factors in how you price things. If a customer is expecting something, but you've priced it down here because you're not including it, just increase the pricing. I'm sure they'd be happy to pay because they value that extra bit of service. So yeah, it's all about sort of making sure that you're charging the right amount, as well as portraying to the customer what actual value that they're getting from that. A big thing that I've taken into account from previous experience is customers like to be reminded of the value that they're getting. So things like annual business reviews, or for the larger packages, quarterly business reviews, just to go over what's happened, what I've done to fix it, that they don't even know about, just to have that reminder of the value in the service. And that does two things. One, for me, I'm able to communicate with the customer and tell them, okay, these things need changing so that we can, make sure this doesn't happen in the future. So there's that practical element. But the other one, like I mentioned, you're constantly reinforcing and driving home the service that I'm providing you is valuable. And without me, all of these things go wrong without you even realizing. So yeah, it's portraying the value as well.
Ben?
Yeah, no, I mean, it strikes me as you talk, right, that one of the most important skills that somebody could develop, not just for somebody looking to work in your field or work alongside you, but for the interaction with humans in general, is listening. It's such an important part, and it's one of the things that stood out to me in terms of trying to understand all facets of empathy, because I'm not particularly emotively empathic. I'm more cognitively empathic in terms of the understanding of the facts, the irrefutable nature of it, and figuring out where we are, in relation to the whole stoic properties and all that kind of thing. But it seems to be that this is something that is lost amidst the panic of a customer, or amidst the misunderstanding of how a piece of technology works. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are as to why it is that this seemingly basic human skill of listening to the words that other people are saying is kind of becoming less and less. Instead of just saying things louder, why don't we just listen, and then we'll figure it out? Why is that kind of losing its prominence in terms of your experience?
It's a good question. Obviously, the digital world, it's no secret that that's had a massive influence on how people communicate, and the level of people that communicate, and the frequency as well. So whereas back when instant messaging wasn't a thing, you would have to visit someone's house to speak to them, or go to a cafe that they'll be at the specific time. But nowadays, if you want to speak to someone, you can do so once every minute if you wanted to, because it's not a huge investment to go and see the person. So that's how it works on a broader scale. But on a more recent scale, voice notes have become a very, very big thing. And there's been some controversy in the people that I've spoken to. Some people really appreciate the speed at which you can just send a message by saying it, and the emotion that you can convey in that voice message as opposed to just text. But the downsides are, if someone's just out and about on a bus or something like this, they don't want to have to listen to a voice note. They just want to be able to read the text and know whether to respond to it instantly. I'm a massive fan of just reading the message in my notification bar a lot of the time and not actually opening it so that I can deal with it later. With a voice note, you can't do that. It's almost anonymous until you go for it. And then at that point, they know you've read it and you have to respond pretty quickly. And there's that added pressure. Do I have to send a voice note back, or can I just send a text message? And different people have different preferences. I'm similar to yourself, where I'm more cognitively empathic, as opposed to the opposite, or maybe not the opposite. It's just a parallel, and that makes me a lot better at sort of typing messages and getting my thoughts through and being able to refer back to their message, as opposed to just knowing what I want to say instantly and ramble with it. I want to be succinct and exact in what I'm saying instead of, rambling. So in fact, a lot of what I do when I reply to people that send me voice notes is I type out what I'm going to say on my laptop almost as a transcript and then send it afterwards. For me, I feel like that's an unnecessary step, but it's about communicating with customers in the way they want to be communicated. Customers are the only people that send me voice notes, so I'm clearly putting in a bit of effort to sort of meet them where they're at, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. And that's such an important thing, because like one of the other things that we talk about with the understanding of human behavior is not about you, right? If
Yeah.
it's too much of you and yourself and your opinion and your views, you may as well be dripping in cognitive bias in some form. So it's such a wonderful sentiment to hear, and it's an interesting take through the differing modes of communication, because again, only in my experience, bear in mind, I deal a lot in memory work and the development of one's memory and capacity and these types of things, situational awareness, etc., etc. And one of the things that comes up a lot is the nature of cognitive offloading with using whatever technology that you're using for the task to kind of do it for you, sort of thing. And with there are effects, and negative and positive, right the way across the board. And so it seems to me, and I could be completely wrong, bear in mind, so please tell me if I am, that you are kind of in a unique position to kind of be on the front line of the effects of cognitive offloading, because it might be that, person A is getting themselves all in a tizzy about a problem that is solved in the instruction manual that everyone just goes away before they set it up. Those types of things. So how do you kind of navigate the whole effects of this kind of simple solution versus something complex, versus the human touch, versus having a bot respond to messages for you, these types of things? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, it goes to sort of the efficiency and looking at efficiency of a business and how you want customers to communicate with you. I've known some businesses to say, if you're having an issue, you need to write it down, send it to this email address, and then I will deal with it. But that's not providing that human level service. And I feel like for the customer, they haven't really fully felt that they've offloaded that. That's still on their shoulders, because if they don't hear a response, they're going to really want to chase that up. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, if it's a WhatsApp message that's replied to super quickly, or a phone call that it's a back and forth conversation, I can answer all of the questions that they have there, and then we can get together an action plan. And that really is quality offloading, and they genuinely feel like a weight has been lifted, and that they don't have to think about that anymore because someone else is. And I think that's kind of all about what IT is. It's offloading all of those IT overheads, similar to how you would with your accountant or an external CFO that you have. You're offloading all of the worries about money onto someone else. Well, my clients, they offload all of their worries and questions about tech to someone else.
I like that. I like that a lot, because it kind of, at least how I understood it, doesn't absolve the responsibility. It's going kind of, if you'll forgive me, you're the best tool for the job. Let's pull you in as a resource to help, so I can stay in control of my own thoughts, not spiral, and then end up shaking like a caffeinated raccoon later on that evening because you're trying to read through everything and solve all of the problems yourself.
Absolutely. It's the time expense that I have to take into account, but it's worth it. So the time expense of saying to clients that they can communicate with me via all these different methods. They can send me a WhatsApp voice note or a message. They can send me an email. I've even had people message me on the social medias like Messenger and things like this, LinkedIn as well. Having all of these different sort of incoming vectors of support requests and questions is a bad idea for operational efficiency, but it is a great idea for customer relations and the quality of their service. Because of where I sit in the market, not everyone is using Teams and these kind of enterprise or larger business applications. They're a plumber and they're used to using Facebook Messenger for all of their customers, so that's where they'll message me. And yeah, that's a really important thing to take into account. Even though it is an expense and it is a deficit, it's definitely worth it for the end user, for the customer. And it's something that I haven't seen any other IT department in the local area do. So a great reason to be doing it.
Not a
The thing
great.
about it, Coby, is it's building business and making yourself memorable. Because that's what surely the aim of it is, to let people feel that you see them and you hear them, but not only that you understand them and that you make them feel comfortable, and that by the way the body works and everything, that will create a positive memory of you in their mind, which, if you're lucky, they will share with other people. So it may take more time. And if are we not being a bit sort of computerish if we only focus on the metrics and of what we're doing, rather than, if we divorce the emotional side of it? And it's something that I go into a lot with the companies that I work with, is that, it's about building for the future, and people making yourself memorable and making yourself, people want to partner with you, making them feel like they're a partner with you rather than a customer. We can do this together. We're in it together. And that sets you up for success in the future, I think.
Absolutely. I've had a couple customers that have asked me for a headshot so they can add me to the staff page of their website, which I always find very complimentary. But it goes back to what I've heard you say previous courses about transactional versus transitional communication with customers. And transactional, it's very sort of black and white to see what a transaction would be in IT support. Problem, I guess, diagnosis of the problem and then resolution. That is the key fundamental facts and figures that you would need to get a customer through the door and then out the door again. But the transitional side of things is, like I said earlier, taking into account the emotions that are coming with this issue. What has this issue caused for their business, the sort of larger scale things? It can be a little bit transactional as well, just having the technical knowledge to know how different systems are intertwined. But one of the systems that do get intertwined is the human brain in the whole thing. Computers don't work without humans. So that is something that you constantly have to take into account when communicating about an incoming support request.
Brilliant. Well, Coby, I think we've reached the end there.
So, shame. I was enjoying myself.
It's gone very quick. So, as we said to the guest we had the other week, there's always the option to maybe come back on another time. By that time, we may have had some feedback about what we've done today, and it'll be good to speak to you. But above all else, thank you very much for coming on, and really good luck with your business.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm super happy with how it's gone so far and how it's been received, and just the reactions that I'm seeing from people like, oh, didn't realize that, tech people could be like that. So, yeah, get in.
Any final thoughts from yourself, Ben?
No, I got a lot from this, because I openly am becoming less and less enamored with technology, purely because, only in my anecdotal experience, it seems to be losing its human side. So that there are good folks like yourself making these points that are pertinent, and it's not just coming from somebody that likes it and could blatantly be considered biased towards the point of view, because I could. That you are putting the human connection back in is something to be championed in my humble yet easily swayed by food opinion. So with that in mind, folks, if you, like us, have gotten anything out of today's episode, then you can show your appreciation by subscribing to the various channels that you find this podcast service on. And if anything about the particular service that Coby offers appeals to you, we'll have some details in the description box below that you can hunt him down and speak to him yourself. So with that in mind, we'll love you and leave you. And we'll see you next time, folks. All right, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Take care.